Hey guys, what's happening? We got us some new Elden Ring hands-off preview, whatever this is. Let's see what's up.
The tarnished will soon return.
Japanese text, okay.
When I
Translation.
interviewed Hidetaka Miyazaki back in June about Elden Ring, one of the things that really stuck out to me was how many of his answers came back around to this core theme of Elden Ring being all about freedom and choice.
Okay.
Having now watched about 15 minutes of gameplay from a variety of sections of the game,
Lucky.
I now fully get what Miyazaki was saying, and how Elden Ring offers more options and flexibility than anything From Software has worked on in the past.
Like builds or actual like choices within the game? That's a sick-ass looking boss.
Unfortunately, we don't have any new B-roll to show you, but the
Damn
gameplay
it.
demo opened up with a look at Elden Ring's first open field, which
Okay.
spread out in every direction with a number of easily visible points of interest. To the left was a small watchtower, far off in the distance straight ahead
Okay.
was the gigantic glowing air tree, and just in front was a site of Lost Grace, which will serve as the game's bonfire checkpoints. But what's interesting about them is that some will cause a light to lead the way towards a recommended path. Of course, it's up to you whether you actually follow that path or not. One of my takeaways
kinda
from
like a
watching the
semi-open
open field
world.
gameplay was this feeling that you can encounter almost anything while exploring.
Actually, it looks
In one
pretty
section,
open
the
world,
player approaches
honestly.
a group of enemies gathered around a campfire when all of a sudden a gigantic dragon swooped down in typical Souls fashion and took them all out in a single blow, which then prompted a massive boss fight.
Sick.
In another section, there was a group of passive enemies
Wow.
walking along a trail escorting a
looks
giant
sick.
carriage that could presumably be attacked and robbed of its contents, should you be skilled enough to survive the fight.
That looks
in a different area,
insane.
there was another carriage that was
The
guarded,
monster
but
design,
this time by a large encampment
amazing.
of enemies that the person playing carefully snuck around without alerting the whole camp, even going as far as using a sleep arrow to silently pacify a guard.
Okay.
Of course, in order
Stealth.
to navigate around such an open field, you're able to summon the Spirit Steed,
Right.
which can utilize special jump platforms to leap over cliffs, allowing for a ton of verticality in the
Okay.
open world design. One big departure from
sure.
previous Souls games, though one that makes sense in a world as massive as the lands
Werewolves?
between, is that you'll now have access to a map. This isn't
Oh.
the actual map, I just pulled this from Getty Images, but imagine it looks something like this. The map gets updated by finding map fragments throughout the world and has the look of an actual illustrated parchment made by a cartographer who lives in the lands between. You can
That's
drop
cool little
markers
detail.
to note locations of tough enemies, NPCs, treasures, or dungeon entrances. As
So a
you'd
lot of
expect, marked
exploration.
locations also place a beacon that's easily visible in-game, allowing you to set your own waypoints when you're looking for places to go next.
Nice,
Dungeons
nice,
can be
nice.
found throughout the open field, and of course, they're full of enemies, traps, treasures,
dungeons.
and even illusory walls.
Kinda like
One
Zelda or
dungeon that I got to
something?
see seemed very basic in its design, with a room that featured a bunch of guillotine traps, and then a treasure room that was guarded
Looks
by a
sick.
handful of enemies ready to pounce on you when you went for the treasure.
The enemies
but
out of
since
this
the
world.
gameplay I watched was cut up and segmented, I never really got a feel for how big or substantial these dungeons really are. The Legacy
okay.
Dungeon, however, I did get a feel for, and it felt massive. Legacy Dungeons are the main attraction of each of the 6 areas of the lands between, and I got to see the first of them, Stormveil Castle. This particular Legacy Dungeon begins with a choice. You can either head through the main gate and suffer through an intensely challenging route of enemies all aware of your presence,
Cool.
or you can sneak around the side through a secret entrance that takes you along a lesser guarded but still
more
very
stealth.
dangerous path with narrow
Sounds like
walkways that
stealth
will
is
punish
playing a
one
serious
dodge
role in
roll
this
with a
game.
fall to your death. Stormveil Castle definitely brought to mind comparisons to the Boletarian Palace from Demon's Souls, right down to a section lined with explosive barrels and an enemy looking to ignite them all with an explosion of their own. Moments like these
Cool.
felt more like homage than anything else, though. And what really stuck out to me more than anything else was how enticing exploration felt with all the various paths that were left unexplored in my hands-off demonstration. Way off in the distance was a house by its lonesome on a narrow cliff that had me wondering how I could get to it. When the player looked back towards the cliffside, I saw all sorts of unexplored platforms and shinies, and with the ability to freely jump, I constantly wondered if I could jump across certain gaps and find something on the other side.
That's cool.
I was
That
told
sounds
that the Legacy
amazing.
dungeons were built with this kind of freedom in mind, and that they were designed to be complex
So
and
maybe like a lot of
multi-layered,
secrets.
which is exactly what I had hoped to hear. The Legacy Dungeon capped off with the player reaching a rooftop that oversaw the main path that the player could have taken if they went through the main gate and fought through that army that awaited them. Since the enemies were
Knowing me, I'd
unaware of
probably
their
do both
presence,
if I
the
can.
player was able to use a sleep arrow to incapacitate the giant beast guarding the boss door and make it through undetected.
Oh, cool.
Finally, I got a little tease
Skipping,
of a boss fight against the giant multi-armed lord
enemies.
from the trailer. And it was about the soulsiest boss they could have possibly shown, with gigantic
Jeez.
sweeping attacks,
This guy looks insane.
earth-shattering slams, counterattacks that come out while it
20
reels from being
hands,
hit, and eventually a
12
second form
feet
with
tall.
a transformed dragon arm that spewed fire and had an unblockable grab that just roasted the poor player. It looked absolutely brutal, and I can't wait to try it myself. Going back to the theme of
Same
player
here,
choice,
man.
all throughout the presentation I was reminded just how much freedom and choice was offered to the player. The freedom to go any direction right from the start in the open field. The freedom to engage or not engage the passive roaming enemies. The choice of whether
That's
to
cool.
run or fight from the dragon when it swooped down. The choice of stealth or reckless violence when attacking the enemy camp. And the choice of whether to go through the main
It's
or
pretty cool.
side
That is a lot
entrance
of
in the
choice.
Legacy dungeon. None of this is all that new in the world of open world RPGs, but
True.
in a From Software action RPG, it's certainly an unprecedented level of choice on top of the already existing customization of builds, weapons, and magic. With every new bit of Elden Ring I see, the weight becomes increasingly more difficult to bear. But bear it I will, as Elden Ring is planned for release on January 21st, 2022.
Yo, that's
Thanks
pretty
for
damn
watching, and
close,
for more
man.
Elden Ring,
That's
check out my
soon.
video breaking down everything we
That's
knew
in a couple
about
of
the
months.
game back in June after my interview with Hidetaka Miyazaki. And for everything else, keep it here on IGN.
Yo, listen, it sounds pretty cool. It sounds like a mix of like Dark Souls and Skyrim. You know, it's Dark Souls gameplay, Skyrim type of world, and exploration. Well, minus the villages, I'm guessing, minus the towns and whatnot, right? But it does sound really promising, I gotta say. Like it adds like a whole new level of the exploration, and maybe like the secrets, the different paths and whatnot. So that could be like really interesting and really cool. And I'm sure that if you're trying to go for like 100%, like I am, it's probably gonna take you a long time to beat this game. You know what I'm saying? If you're trying to go for like every little detail, every little part of the map, trying to explore every little nook and cranny, I mean, you're gonna be there for a while, and that sounds like a lot of fun actually. That sounds quite amazing. This game is gonna sell millions, freaking teed, and I can't wait to play it. Thank you for watching. I'll see you guys. Peace.